Hello, Route 56. Good to see you guys again. Welcome back. I bet we all had a great time at camp together. All right, today we're going to be focusing once again on our focus of faith. So today, before we start, we're going to have a little game. And it's going to be, you're going to have to guess what number I'm putting behind my back, number 1 through 10. You guys are going to have a couple of chances to get it right. Are you ready? All right, let's do this. All right, what are your guesses? Because if you guessed 9, you're right. All right, good job to those who picked 9. It's a very skill-based game right here. No luck involved whatsoever. Are you ready for this round? All right, 3, 2, 1. I started with 3 because that's what I picked. All right, good job to those who picked 3. Moving on to our next one. Okay, ready? In 3, 2, 1. It's 7. Lucky number 7. Good job to those who picked 7. You probably kept picking 7 until you got 7. All right, this is going to be the last one. It's a real tough one. How many fingers on your hand? Who knows? In 3, 2, 1, it's 10. And all right, good job, everybody. We'll see you around.
You work together for our good. You are loving. You give us more than we deserve. You are unfailing. And we are more than conquerors. Savior. And you, our future is secure. By your power, we will not be shaken. We will not be silent. Sin is powerless. Our God is for us. Consider all that He has done. Our sin He carried, and by His wounds we've overcome. Now we stand redeemed, and we are more than conquerors. Savior, in you our future is secure. By your power, we will not be shaken. We will not be silent. Sin is powerless. Our God is for us. We will not be broken. He won't be defeated. Death is powerless. Our God is for us. We will sing, sing out, sing for the hope that's found in His love. We will sing, sing out, sing to our God. Oh, we will not be shaken. We will not be silent. Sin is powerless. Our God is for us. We will not be shaken. We will not be silent. Sin is powerless. Our God is for us. We will not be broken. He won't be defeated. Death is powerless. Our God is for us.
Welcome back, everyone, after that harrowing game. I'm sure most of you made it out alive. It's good to see you all again. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to teach you here, but I was grateful to see everyone at camp. Those who weren't able to come still love you, waiting to see you until we get back from all this craziness. But today we're going to be focusing on a concept known as faith. Now, faith, defined by Hebrews, is the evidence of things unseen. So that's believing that something is going to happen even though you have no actual physical proof at the time when you're believing in it. It's like we believe that God is going to save us from ourselves. We believe that God is going to change this world for the better. Today we're going to focus on the Apostle Paul. We're going to be in Acts 27. I'm going to read through the entire chapter. It's all right. We've got a lot of proper nouns to go through, but luckily I'm here for you. I'm just making up how they pronounce along the way. Let's do this. So starting in verse 27, at this moment in time, Paul is being carted away to Rome, to the capital of the Roman Empire, because he's been accused of a crime that he hasn't committed. And now the Jewish leaders are trying to get him imprisoned because of his faith, because he wants everyone to believe in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And they're trying to do everything they can to stop him. But Paul, being a Roman citizen, that meant at that time that he had special rights. He had the ability to appeal to Caesar, the leader of Rome himself, so that he could be acquitted of these crimes. So he is on the route to Rome with his friend Luke, who is the author of the book of Acts, so that they can make their way to Rome and appeal their case before Caesar. So we're going to get started at 27, verse 1. When it was decided that we would sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius. Centurion is basically the person in charge of a group of about 100 people, and that's what Julius's job was, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We boarded the ship from Adramyttium, about to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so that they may provide for his needs. Now that's extraordinary because Paul was a prisoner, and prisoners weren't given rights, especially back then. But Paul, because of who he is, had been talking to Julius, had been telling him who he was, what he was about, why he worshiped God. And because of Paul's earnestness, because of Paul's faith, Julius allowed him privileges that other people wouldn't get. So while he was going to be shipped off to prison, Paul was getting an opportunity to spend time with friends. I know right now this seems like it's prison, what you're forced to be into because of this virus. But this is an opportunity for us to reach out to other people. There are those in need, whether it be emotionally, mentally. Just send someone anything. Give them a text. Tell them you love them. Anything for them. That's all you need to do, is to look out for other people right now, because they also need to be looking out for you. So continue. From there we put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. When we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. Then the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. We made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Cnidus. When the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete, opposite Salmone. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens near the town of Lasea. Now I know you guys are going, all these words, I don't know what they mean. That's okay. I don't understand every single word I just said, but I know where they're at geographically because I can look them up. See, a big part of what we're doing here is we have to learn, we have to go beyond what we just read to go to other sources. So we need to understand the path that Paul took was not an easy one, especially going by sea. But he was going out in faith, knowing he had to go to Rome to appeal to Caesar himself to declare about the greatness of God. So while all these places seem like they're far off and away, just think how far away something like Denver would be to them of that day. They didn't know Denver existed. They didn't know America existed. But through God's grace, we were brought here and given an opportunity to reach out to each other. So we're going to continue in verse 9. Much time had been lost, and sailing had already become dangerous because by now it was after the Day of Atonement. That's also known as Yom Kippur. It's a Jewish holiday. So Paul warned them, "Men, I concede that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo, and to our own lives also." But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided we should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. This was a harbor in Crete facing both southwest and northwest. So Luke here is describing a situation that was very common back in that day, is that at this time of the year, traveling by ship, it was really difficult for you to go because this was a very stormy time of year, and old rickety wooden boats weren't made to survive that as well. That's why most of the time in this day, you didn't really see trading, you didn't really see travel by ship because it was just that dangerous. Now Paul, knowing because God had delivered him sight of something he hadn't seen yet, had faith in what God told him and tried to tell the other people about it. But Julius, while he may have given him special concessions to meet with friends, couldn't believe in something he hadn't seen. So he did not agree with Paul. And they sailed out anyway. And we're going to see how disastrous that ends up being for them. So sometimes God asks for us to do things that seem impossible, that seem stupid, that seem out of there. Like, how am I supposed to do that? That makes no sense. That couldn't physically happen. But Paul, as a testament to us, believed in him, even when things were crazy, even when it would seem in his best interest, he should just keep quiet. So we'll move on to verse 13. When a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they weighed anchor and sailed across the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force, called the northeaster, swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so we gave way to it and were driven along. As we passed to the lee of a small island called Cauda, we were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, so the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. Because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Syrtis, they lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. We took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved. So this is what life sometimes presents us with. That opportunity we think, oh, that looks just great enough. I think I'm going to go. And we step out. And suddenly we're in a storm where we can't even see the sun or the stars. No matter the time of day, everything seems so dark and hopeless because we stepped out in what we thought was faith, but what actually we wanted rather than what God wanted. So this is their opportunity. They have messed up immensely. They've done everything humanly possible they can to save themselves, but there is no hope for them unless God's behind them, as we'll see continuing on in verse 21. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed." Last night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, "Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island." So this is an amazing statement here. After all this, Paul is kind of saying, "I told you so." And it's one of the rare times where you have an opportunity to say that and you not be wrong. Paul is saying, look, you should have listened to me, but you didn't. It's okay. God's still got our backs. And that's what God does. When we don't listen to him, he's still there behind us. He will punish us for doing wrong, but he is still there to keep us moving forward, to keep us moving closer to him, to where we need to be in the world, regardless of our circumstances. This seems like a hopeless, lost cause. But Paul had faith because of what God had told him through his angel that they would be saved. And now he's trying to encourage them. Well, moving on to verse 27. On the 14th night, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea. When about midnight, the sailors sensed they were approaching land. They took soundings and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings again and found it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. And in an attempt to escape from the ship, the sailors let the lifeboat down into the sea, pretending they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. Then Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, "Unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved." So the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and let it drift away. Now this is another amazing statement Paul is making here. That makes no sense to human eyes and human ears and human understanding. A lifeboat is designed to protect you when the ship goes down. But Paul is saying, get rid of it. All it is a crutch. We need to stay here because this is where God wants us. It must have blown their minds to hear this. It makes no sense. And sometimes what God says doesn't make sense. And it's only later that we understand, oh, he made me do this because this happened. And sometimes we'll never get that clarity. We just have to trust in what he's saying. And we'll only understand when we get into heaven. But for this moment right here, Paul is saying something radical. And they believed because right now he'd been right. And they're starting to show faith in something that they didn't previously believe in. So we'll start back again in verse 33. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you have been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Not about you guys, but I can't go a day without food. I need it. It's good. They went 14 days without food. Human body's not supposed to do that. but they did it anyway because they needed to be safe. So continuing in 34. Now I urge you to take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God in front of them all. Then he broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Although there were 276 of us on board, when they had eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they foisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow struck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. So some of you are asking, why would they want to kill the prisoners? Well, that's because their job was to protect them, to make sure they got to where they were going to be. If they lost them, chances are they would lose their lives as well. So what the centurion does here by stopping them from killing them is an immense act of faith, because they could easily lose every single one of them. But he did it in order to save Paul, knowing his own life was at stake, because he loved Paul so much. He loved the man he'd come to know over these days who had taught him faith. And so we see at this very moment, their ship is lost. Now, I don't think any of you have ever been in a shipwreck before, but it's not pleasant. And we're talking in one of the worst weathers there could have been, worst storms there could have ever been. Running across the rocks, being forced to support yourself on a plank of wood just to get to shore. But not a single one of them was lost, because God promised they wouldn't be. And because of their faith, they all made it there. So with this in mind, guys, just be thinking about what you can do in your own lives. What is God asking you to do, to step out in faith to do? Is it to talk to someone else? Is it to do something involving missionary work? Is it to do anything that God requests of you? Just be there and be willing to listen. Because when you do, although things may get difficult, He's going to save you from that shipwreck. Just know that we all love you and we miss you. We'll see you later.